See, we're joined in studio right now by Mike Rogers, the Republican congressman from the Brighton area. Mike, thanks so much for coming in this morning. We also have Peter Hoekstra on the line, the outgoing congressman from West Michigan, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids area over there. So I got to tell you, I broke in news, but that was so long ago, back in the early 1980s, and it certainly was a kick to get invited every year to Governor Milliken's Christmas party at his residence here in Lansing. That would always impress one's date, but since then I've primarily been a sportscaster, and so I'll give you the football score, but at the end of the day, the football score doesn't matter. We've got here congresspeople who are dealing with things that, in fact, do matter. And I guess with both of you on the line, the question I want to ask is why can't we talk? Why can't we get anything done in this country anymore? We just haven't seen polarization like this in my lifetime.
Yeah, Rich. One of the things, and by the way, hi, Pete.
Hey, good morning. Who's this, Rogers?
This is Rogers, Hoekstra.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am doing just fine, thank you.
Good. I just want to take a first shot. One of the things that bothered me about, and I think has been absolutely an effort to destroy civility in politics, and you don't have to but turn on the TV to see it, is you have these third-party groups under the McCain-Feingold bill, which I thought was awful at the time. I said at the time this was going to bring about third-party groups who are unaccountable, untransparent, whose sole job it is to get up in the morning and tear the other guy down. And that's exactly what we have. And so the day after the election, it starts again for these people. They still have that job at that third-party group that gets up in the morning thinking, my whole job today is to make sure the other guy looks bad. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there used to be a time when we were allowed to have rough-and-tumble campaigns, okay. But when it happened, there's a time to campaign, and then there's a time to govern. And somehow in America, we have lost that time to govern. And I put the blame squarely on the change of the campaign rules that shoved money into the dark corners, which I think is not healthy for America.
The word would be comedy, would it not? That you guys would, at least the history that I've seen, is that you guys would have debates, heated debates, sure. And then the gavel would come down, the session would be over, and people would get together and have a drink or two and talk about things. And I gather that's just flat out not happening anymore.
I don't see it enough. I mean, you forge relationships in the House.
Exactly.
And I have some relationships in the House, but it's more difficult to do it. And the way the timetable is, it's an interesting story. Gerald Ford told me that he thought the end of civility came with the jet plane before he passed away. We had a great conversation. And I asked him what he meant, and he said, because before that, you knew that afterward you would have a chance to get to meet your colleagues. Now in Congress is the gavel comes down, we're done screaming at each other, we run to the airplane, come fly back home and start yelling back here at home. And he said that he thought that took away some of the civility, because at least at some point when you were done with the debate, you had to sit down and talk to somebody in another forum. Mm-hmm. And that other forum sometimes is hard to accomplish with the very busy lives that people lead trying to get back home and be in Washington and doing all of that.
Congressman Hoekstra, do you agree?
In many ways, I do. I mean, what's happened now, many of our constituents expect us to live back in our districts. Many of us decide that we are going to live back in our districts. It's just easier on the families and all of those kinds of things. And Mike is absolutely right. The jet plane makes that all possible. I still remember the stories of Dan Rostenkowski, the former Democratic chair of the Ways and Means Committee. He was in Congress for his career overlapped briefly with mine. And he and Bob Michel would talk about, the old days when, Congress would go out of session, and he and Bob, and they would hop in their station wagon together, and they would drive back to Illinois. And so the opportunities to build those kind of deep relationships beyond political relationships, where you actually get to know the other guy's family, get to know more of their background and those types of things that then enable you to work together on the tough stuff, the tough issues in politics. That's gone. The other thing you've got is you got 24/7 news. There are people that are stirring up the news each and every day, and Mike will tell you that I think he'll agree with this, is that the people that are in the middle that are working for solutions are not the ones that you often see on TV. You've got a couple of the cable networks that just want to get folks on there who will yell and scream at each other because it's better for their ratings, and that's just a destructive destructive cancer that gets into the political scheme that makes it difficult to get things done.
Congressman, you're leaving office. You don't have anything to lose at this point. You can speak frankly, not that you haven't before, but how would you fix it? What would your best advice be?
Well, I've thought about that a lot, especially through this campaign cycle where I was running for governor. And I think Mike has hit it squarely on the head, and I don't know how to fix it. It's all the campaign finance laws that have allowed these third parties to come in. They are unaccountable. They are spending more money on campaigns than candidates. There's no accountability. We don't know who puts the money in. And at the same time, I'm all for free speech. If people want to influence the debate and to influence public policy, go ahead. I don't think going with public financing of campaigns, I don't think that fixes the problem. I'm not even sure that would be constitutional. So it's very, very difficult. It just puts more responsibility on people like Mike, who are going to be back in Congress, and say, regardless of all the noise that's going on out there, you've got to focus. You've got to get some of these things done. And then for those of us that have been in the process, when we leave the process, we've got to defend the people there and recognize that we have a responsibility to the system. We know how it works. We know the tough choices and the compromises that these guys sometimes need to make. And when they make them and they're making the tough calls, we've got to be out there defending them rather than taking cheap shots.
Isn't the Constitution what we, the people, say that the Constitution is? I look at Canada had a national election about 18 months ago. And prior to the election, they have a commission there that said each political party can spend a maximum of $10 million, period. End of story. It seems to me it would be simple to enact a piece of legislation like that.
It might be simple to enact a piece of legislation. It would go to the courts, and the courts would say, sorry, you can't limit the free speech of people outside of the political parties who want to express their point of views. The other things that they do, if you watch a lot of these ads today, they're not saying vote for so and so. They're not saying what at the end of the ad it says call so and so and tell them that you don't agree with or that you want to repeal the health care bill or something like that. And what they call that, and what the courts have described that as, is issue advocacy. That's perfectly legal. That it's not advocating for you to vote for or against somebody. It's about talking about a policy that you have a passion for, and that's unrestricted money. So maybe I don't think there's any easy answer. We just need to expect and hope that our political leaders, people like Mike, can rise above that and say, hey, there are issues that need to get done.
Well, I'll tell you, it strikes me, just as a citizen, as one of the most serious issues that faces our democracy and our country today, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I think the simplest fix is transparency. The reason that money has flowed to these third-party organizations is because now they don't have to disclose who they are. What my argument was, even if you didn't like the Democrat or Republican Party, at least you knew who they were. So when the ad was up, you go, "Oh, I kind of get that." Now you don't know who are Americans for Kittens and green trees.
But I've read that
we don't know who those people are.
You as a congressman have to raise something like $20,000 a day while you're in office and able to raise enough money so you can run for re-election.
I'm not sure it's that high.
Well, let's say it's $10,000 a day.
Yeah,
so,
whatever it is,
yeah.
it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
The problem is, and I argue is there's not the problem with politics is that it is the amount of money clearly, but think about McDonald's. At least a few years ago, in the same cycle as a member of Congress would spend $1 billion trying to sell you a cheeseburger. And if you think about what we're asking these people to do, they'll declare war, they have impact on your taxes, they have impact on your educational system. So my argument is not the fact that there's, the problem is that there's so few doing so much and so many not doing anything at all. So I think if people got involved in it, and I think President Barack Obama showed us that by having lots and lots and lots of $25, $15, and $50 donors. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a great way to go. The problem is you've got to get people fired up and interested to do that. If you disclose the other money, some of these third-party groups would go away.
Congressman, I want to ask you what you want to do in the next 2 years, assuming you win re-election. We're just flat out of time. I just want to thank you for coming by and having the discussion with us this morning. Thanks so much.
Jobs, deficits,
Yeah,
and jobs.
yeah. There you have it. Okay, in 4 seconds. Congressman Rogers, thanks so much for coming by the studio, and Congressman Hoekstra, thanks for joining us, and best of luck in your future endeavors.
Hey, great. Thank you. Mike, have a great day.
Thanks, Pete. You too.
All right, we're going to take a break. Michael Patrick Shields in the morning. I'm Rich Kincaid filling in. Just got lost for a second there, Amanda, but we'll get it back. We'll regain our footing, and we will continue right after this.